of the giants from Hebron, and they conquered the areas of the mountains. However, there are certain areas that they did not take, they didn't drive out the Canaanites from. And the same was true that the tribe of Binyamin did not drive out the Jebusites from their area of Jerusalem. Okay? And that's the message as the parak continues. The people of Yosef were successful to get rid of the people from Beis El, but as we'll see, the people from Manasseh didn't get rid of the people from Beit Shan, and some people did and some people didn't. Some people were successful, yes.
Those didn't drive them out. Does that necessarily mean that they tried by force, or does that always mean that they tried to drive them out?
No, I don't think so.
They're peaceful with that?
Sometimes it says they weren't able to, right? Yeah. That means that they tried. If it doesn't say that, it sounds like that they just didn't want to. They had enough of fighting and killing, and although God had told them to do it, they were either lazy or they thought they knew better and they could deal with these neighbors, or maybe they liked the ideas of having these Canaanite neighbors. Can learn some nice pagan ideas from them. I don't know what their thoughts were. All we know is they didn't do it. They had control over them because they could even charge them. They taxed them in certain places. So they had a certain amount of power over them, right? And presume if you have the ability to tax somebody, then theoretically you have the ability to kill him as well. You can only tax somebody if you have police and an army. And they make more resistance if you try killing them than if you just try taxing them. But we'll see. In chapter 2, we'll learn that God is very critical and upset with them for doing this. Right? So we don't really have to have a good explanation of why they're doing it, because God is also upset with them. Right? Okay. Parshat Shoftim. V'lo hayrish Manasseh as Beit Sha'an. So if you want to know where Beit Sha'an is today, it's still called Beit Sha'an today. Right? It's up here. Here. Beit Sha'an. It's on the left side of the Jordan. I mean, it's on the west side of the Jordan. Right? It's a very ancient city, Roman city. It was a very affluent city. It's amphitheaters and palaces and a big water supply. That area is very fertile, that part of the land. That's we mentioned once. That's where the breadbasket of Israel, this whole valley over here, the Jezreel Valley. Today it's called Emek HaMayanot, the Valley of the Springs. There's big grain fields there, and so that's Beit Sha'an. So this whole area we go to, this is the tribe here, as you can see, it's the tribe of Manasseh. Over here, this over here is Issachar, but this over here is Manasseh. So Beit Sha'an, what did they not do? They did not drive out the people who live there. Et Beit Sha'an ve'et benoteha. What does that mean? What are banot?
Daughters. So it's like the villages around.
Right, very good. The villages around are called the daughters of the major city. Why are they called daughters opposed to sons?
Because it's containers.
Because it's a feminine word. Since a city is a feminine word, so the smaller cities are called daughters, right? Just like the small girls are called daughters. All right. So they didn't drive out the inhabitant, the city of Beit Sha'an and its surrounding towns. Ve'ta'anach. You should also see on the map over here, which is also up there somewhere. Ta'anach. Where is it? Up here somewhere. Here, there's Ta'anach, a bit more west. Ta'anach. And Benotea and the surrounding towns. Ve'et Yoshvei Megiddo. I'm going to start a line. Ve'et Yoshvei Dor, which is not this one. There's two places called Dor. This is called Dor with an Aleph. This is called Dor with a Vav. So it probably means the one over here. I don't know for sure. Ve'et Benotea and its surrounding towns. Ve'et Yoshvei Yivla'am. And Yivla'am, which is another town over there. Here, Yivla'am. That's Yivla'am. Here. Ve'et Yoshvei Megiddo. That's a very famous place where Shlomo Melech had built places for his horses. That's just over here. Megiddo. It's this whole area around here. They did not drive out the people from there. By Yoel HaKenaani, what does that mean? Yoel is a name. Here doesn't mean it's a verb. And they
agreed, right?
Agreed. Now this is very strange. They agreed to live there. You could say, we agreed that they should live there.
They made the agreement for them to live there, no?
We made an agreement that we would let them live there. Yeah, but it's a bit funny because it says they did, Vayoel HaKanani. Strange. It could mean that they wanted to, not they agreed. They wanted to. And they didn't want to move out. We said, would you like to move? We'd rather you move out. No, we want to stay here. Just like we'd like the Arabs to leave the West Bank. But they don't want to leave. They'd rather stay here. So they'll stay here and pay taxes. Or they won't pay taxes, whatever. But that's what it means. It doesn't mean they agreed. They wanted to. Often when you want to do something, you agree to do something. That's the point. They didn't agree to live here. Because we didn't say, oh, please stay and live here. No, that wasn't the point. They agreed to our request.
Can you please leave?
Yeah, it means they wanted to, right? Now, I want to introduce you to something that some of you may not be familiar. I think this is the first example we've had since the beginning of Shoftim, is this parentheses.
There's a parenthesis.
You know what parentheses are?
Brackets.
English people call them round brackets, as opposed to square brackets. Square brackets are those, what Americans call brackets, are the other ones, right? I mean, maybe it's not English, maybe it's just yeshivish, I don't know. We have round brackets and square brackets. Here they're called parentheses, okay? Which means I like that. Now, what is that doing here? Why is there word in parentheses? Yud Shin Bet without vowels. What's it doing? It's called you usually call it a Kri Kesiv, which means it's written one way in the Tanakh, but it's read a different way. It's written Yud Shin Bet, and it's read Yud Shin Bet Yud. And now the reason for that we're not really sure. It's clear from the other words in the text that Yoshvei is the right way to say it. In Yoshvei Yivla'am, Yoshvei Megiddo. Right? For some reason or other, it's written without the Yud at the end, which can't be read as Yoshvei. It's Yoshev. You can't just take out Yud at the end. So I don't know why. Is it because some ancient manuscript didn't have a Yud and therefore they decided to write it without a Yud? But it's weird. Yeah. It could be it's trying to. Usually the Radak, who's one of the early commentaries commentators on the Tanakh, will tell you that when you have a Kri Kesiv, it's trying to tell you a double message. Read both as if you read both stories. Read it with a Yud and read it without a Yud, and there's two messages and both of them are right. And that's why one was written the way it's written, and it's read differently because it wants to give both messages. What would you do with that here? And each time it occurs almost on every page of Tanakh. This thing. Right? Can we see on the next page? The next one.
You read what's in the parentheses?
No, you read what's outside. Here, there's another one on page 8. The bottom of page 8, there's another one. Can you see it? Second to bottom line. It's Elon Betza'anim, but it should be read as Elon Betza'ananim, which has got another nun. Like it's just another way of it. I don't know. Every time you have to think about it, here it would mean Yoshev means the dweller of. It's in the singular. Yoshvei means the dwellers, right? Singular may be significant.
Who decided we should read it this way?
That's the tradition. I mean, it's also obvious from the context that that's the right way to read it.
Yeah.
Because they're inhabitants of the town, or is in the plural. Right? If you take the Yud away, it becomes the inhabitant in the singular. There wasn't just one person there. Or maybe there was just one person there, but that's...
We're not going to drive out this one person.
Well, yeah, we might do it, but it's weird, right? That usually it's obvious that the right way to read it is not the way it's written.
But we were talking in the singular before about the tribes.
Yes, that's true. I agree, but yes, but what is it? What would it mean over here?
Yeah.
So, and all the other cities it says it in the plural. So it's a bit strange. But maybe it's come to teach you that they were all united, or there was only one big guy there. I have no idea. Anyway, each time you can think about it, but that's the idea. It's called a Kri Kesiv.
It doesn't really. Yeah.
Right? It's written one way, which is the way it's in parentheses. It's pronounced the other way. That's a tradition to pronounce it the other way. Okay, so these are all the cities that didn't get rid of the Canaanites. Pasuk Chof. Vayihi, and it was Ki Chazak Yisrael, when Israel became strong. So at some point they became strong enough to impose a taxation against them. Originally it looks like that they weren't strong enough. They just let them live there. Then when they got stronger, even still they didn't kill them. What did they do? Vayosem etzkanani lamas. Lamas means to pay tribute. Meaning mas is the modern Hebrew for taxation, right? Right. Misrad HaMisim is the tax office. Okay, mas is tax. V'horesh lo horishu, but they didn't drive them out. V'horesh lo horishu doesn't mean they drove them and didn't drive them. No, it's not. It's a way in Hebrew of saying, but they didn't drive them out. V'horesh, drive them out. Lo horishu, they didn't drive them out. In English, you wouldn't say that, right? That's what it means. They forced them to pay taxation, but didn't drive them out, even though they had the power to make them pay taxation. Okay. Next tribe, Ephraim. Ephraim is more south of the Menashe. Lo rishu et hakrani hayoshev begezer. They didn't drive out the Canaanites who lived in Gezer. What does Gezer usually mean? Gezer usually means a carrot. But here it's actually the name of a town, which is over here somewhere. Yes, Gezer. Just near the hay of Hashpela, there's Gezer. Okay, so this is Ephraim. We did Menashe. We've now gone to Ephraim, which is over here. They didn't drive out the inhabitants of them. Gezer. V'yeshev haknani b'kirbo Gezer. So they
Gezer today is still from now. It's the same place. Gezer. The good kibbutz Gezer.
It must be there. Yeah. And like I said, the Israeli law has to be the same place to give it the same name. V'yeshev haknani b'kirbo, and the Canaanites lived in their midst. Kerev, right? Like the way we do kiruv. What's kiruv mean?
Close.
Close. To do kiruv v'chokim, right? Means to bring people to a distance closer, right?
Living amongst each other.
Right, they lived amongst each other. Before we didn't say that idea. Before we just said they didn't drive them out. Okay, you'll have your neighborhood, we'll have our neighborhood. No, they actually lived amongst them. They didn't make them pay taxation. Right? This is like getting from bad to worse.
Yeah. That's why there's a pay. It's like pam, pam, pam.
Yes, well, but actually there's a break in between, in between each tribe. Yeah, sometimes a samach, sometimes a pay. It could be indicating that it's got really bad. Zevulun. Where does Zevulun live? They live up here. This is Zevulun over here. There. Got it? So we describe this part of the land now. Lo horishet Yoshvei Kitron. They didn't get rid or drive out the inhabitants of Kitron. Yes, here's Kitron there. Kitron, just over there by the Vav of Zevulun. Joshua Nahalol. There's a place today called Nahalol. They're just nearby, near the Tabor. It's near Afula. Vayeshev Aknani Bekirbo, the same story, the Canaanites lived. V'yiyulamas, they did pay them taxation. They were a bit better. Alright?
That's why it's only the summit.
Okay, maybe. Asher, where's Asher? That's up here. This private Asher, it's a bit north. Akko is where it is today. It goes up to Tsur, which is already in Lebanon. So part of modern Lebanon is the tribe of Asher. Now this gets really bad. Asher Lohorishet Yoshve Akko, they didn't get rid of the inhabitants of Akko, which is here. At Yoshvei Sidon, which is up here. Today's in Lebanon. Sidon it's called. Okay? Didn't give them either. Vet Achlav, I don't know where that is. And Achziv, which is this place. This is a place of a beautiful area called Achziv, it's in Israel. Vet Chelba, Vet Afik. Afik is here. Vet Rechov, which I don't know where that is. Okay? Now, Vayeshev HaAsheri, that Asheri means the people from the tribe of Asher, they dwelt B'kerev HaKnani, amongst the Canaanites, Yoshvei Haaretz, the inhabitants of the land. Then you notice that it's the other way around now.
Yeah.
Before he said that the Canaanites lived amongst them, now he says they lived amongst the Canaanites.
Because in the first case, the Canaanites were the minority.
That's what you have to say, right? When there were so many Canaanites there that they just lived amongst the Canaanites. Suppose the Canaanites lived amongst them. Either way, they didn't drive them out or kill them, but the question is who was living amongst who. Okay. Naphtali, where's Naphtali? That's this area over here around Tzfat. This area over here, north of the Kinneret. They also had Lohorishet Yoshvei Beit Shemesh. Now, that's not the Beit Shemesh that we know of. The Beit Shemesh we know of is down here. There, Beit Shemesh.
Was it the responsibility of each tribe to go to the area that they were supposed to take over and kill like the people?
That's what it sounds like. And that was the reason why Yehoshua divided out the lands, because he felt that each tribe would be more likely to fight for their own land. So that's why we said Yehuda fought for his land. That was the piece we took. These also seem to have taken over the land. It wasn't they didn't live there. They lived there. How'd you live there without taking it over? You know, the Canaanites don't let you come here. They must have fought for it. But, and it was their responsibility to wipe them out too.
It seems like they were, like, for each of these tribes, like they were outnumbered in the sense of fight for the land.
But they weren't outnumbered to fight for it. Because if they were outnumbered to fight, they would have kicked them into the sea. Right? The Canaanites don't want us to live here. So obviously there were enough of us to control them and make them pay taxes, but we didn't want to kill them, so they didn't.
Well, the commandment was to kill them. Why didn't they?
Why didn't they do it? Same reason why lots of people in Tel Aviv don't keep Shabbos, I suppose. As we're going to see, people...
Why weren't they commanded to kill them?
Oh, that's a good question. I was waiting for somebody to ask that question, right? Why did God promote genocide?
Because these were extremely horrible people.
That's what I assume. I've never met any of them, right? But my assumption is that God, who created them in the first place and created the world and created everything else, and God who created the world because He's merciful, must have come to the conclusion that these have got no hope. Well, I understand, but is there any other way to come to terms with this? Unless you want to say that God's cruel and God doesn't just, and a whim decides to do this. It's not our experience for the creator of the universe who went to so much effort, so to speak, to create all these things and all the beautiful things we have in the world, and all of a sudden on a bad day, it's like, oh, I don't like those guys, let's get rid of them. So we're not there, so we don't really have enough information. I just have to assume that these are pagans and they're going to ruin God's world. You know, it's a bit like saying, yes, does God say that we should go and wipe out the Nazis? Yes. You should say, yeah, but not all the women and children. Okay, that's because we don't know what the likely consequences are. If we found baby Hitler somewhere, right, and we knew that this was going to lead to the death of 20 million people, then we'd probably think the right thing would be to kill him. And we wouldn't be able to do that because we don't know how to make these decisions. But God could tell you, this guy, if you don't kill him, this guy will cause the death of 20 million people. And therefore I'm telling you to kill him now before he has a chance to do it. Bob is a little blonde-haired, blue-eyed baby. Yes, but God knows better than you.
How does it say, like, Tisgorat alev shelcha? No. It says it different. Like when it says, don't make your heart soft, or like, close your heart. What are the words of Torah? It says something like that, no? I remember vaguely, just like close your heart.
I don't have the details to answer your question, but that must be the answer, right?
Oh, so doesn't God just want us to settle on the land, like it's our land? That's why we had to come in?
But that sounds like a very weak reason to kill people. You know, I mean, yes, that's, I don't know.
Can we drive them out? Like, were we meant to
No, the Rambam says we were meant to give them the offer to move out. Right? Rambam says that they gave them letters and they said, if you want, you can welcome to leave. And there's, you know, we're coming here under God's command to take over this land. If you want to leave. Okay? Go live somewhere else. But this is the land that we have to...
So bad.
No, well, I think that's why Ari's point is important. That this is the place that God wants to develop a society that will bring peace and to the world. Right? The world was a place where people were killing each other, right? Where people had no rights, women had no rights, slaves had no rights, babies had no rights. If you ever read the book by Ken Spiro called World Perfect, right? It's a great book. And it gives you a bit of an insight in what the pagan world looked like. It's hard for us to imagine because we live in a world that's been affected by Judaism for 3,000 years, right? But the world, there were the Aztecs, which wasn't affected by the Judaism, but there's like 24/7 human sacrifices. I think the only reason why that carried on in the Aztecs till 500 years ago is because they had no exposure to Judaism. That was happening in the rest of the world as well, but they gradually went away from it. So God wants to develop a society here which will then spread to the world its ideas, and that was only going to happen to the extent that they're out and we're here. They're going to be here, this is the problem. Because they stayed here, that means we couldn't do our job properly either. So Gilgashi, Chazal say Gilgashi will give them the choice. We're going to live in Africa, we're going to live in Africa. And then after we've sorted out our society here and built the society we're trying to do, then we'll try and influence the rest of the world. That was the goal. So what you're saying, Ari, is very true, but it wasn't just, because we needed a homeland.
They were
right?
also bad.
And they would interfere with our ability to create that society which was meant to rectify the world. Right? God had a plan for this world, and these pagans had messed up the whole thing, were ruining the world, and the Jewish people were picked to rectify that. Okay? All right. So Naphtali didn't do this, and V'Yoshua Beit Anat, V'Yesh, also the people of Beit Shemesh. I told you there's a different Beit Shemesh. Yoshua Beit Anat, V'Yeshev B'Kerev HaKananim. They also, same story as Asher. They lived amongst the Canaanites. Yoshua Beit Shemesh, Beit Anat, Hayu Lehem Namas. And the people from Beit Shemesh and from Anat, which were the two towns that they didn't. Doesn't say Naphtali didn't take the whole area. These two particular towns, they didn't drive the people out, and those people became paying tribute to them. Okay. Next tribe, Dan. And where does Dan live? Anyone heard of the Dan Bus Company? Why is it called the Dan Bus Company? No. You're right but wrong. It's not named after someone who, it's not because the boss was called Dan, it's because Gush Dan is the name of the area of Tel Aviv. The whole area of Tel Aviv, Yaffo, that whole area is called Gush Dan. Why? Because the tribe of Dan lived there. Okay, if you look at it on the map, over here, it's just this area here. Here they show it. Here, Dan. Okay, so it's this area here. That's Tel Aviv. What?
Gaza is in there?
Gezer, no,
No,
Gezer.
Gaza.
No, Gaza is further down here.
Ah.
Right? Is it Gaza? No, that's in Yehuda. Right? So Dan is right here. This is the Dan is around. Dan starts in Beit Shemesh here, but he goes all the way to the coast. This is all the tribe of Dan. Now, the tribe of Dan. Well, that's only later on. It's later on in the book of Shoftim. You know the tribe of Dan is up here as well, right? Well, this place is called Dan as well. If you look right at the top of the map, it's basically called Dan Laish. Right? That's because we'll see that Dan were pressured to move out because of these Canaanites who pushed them out of their tribal lands, and they felt pressured, so they said, let's go and find some other place. And some of them moved up north, and Dan had two parts, one down here, one up there. But the moment, this is before that split, and Dan actually has this part, but the Amorites pushed them out. By Yilachatzu, that means they put pressure on. The Amorites were the people, the inhabitants of the land. So there were Canaanites, Perizzites. The Canaanites and Perizzites lived around here. The Amorites lived by the coast. That's why it's a different tribe now. It's not just another word. The tribe who lived by the coast were the Amorites. So those Amorites, what did they do? By Yilachatzu Amorites B'nei, they put pressure on them to do what? Hahara. Now what does Hahara mean? There's three hays there. Right? The word Har, Hey Reish, is a mountain.
It's like to the mountain.
Right. The first Hey means the mountain. The last Hey is to the mountain. Right? In Hebrew, there's two ways to say to. You can put a lamed at the beginning, which means Le Yerushalayim, or you can say Yerushalayma, means going to Yerushalayim.
What's it?
Someone claims there's a difference. The one means towards, and one means to. Right? But I've never checked it out to see whether it's really true. But those are basically Rashi says often, a hey at the end is like a lamed at the beginning. Doesn't necessarily mean it's exactly the same, but it's more or less the same idea. So they pushed them towards the mountains. That means Dan actually occupied the lowlands around Tel Aviv, which is not the mountains. But they pushed them out of there towards the mountains. The mountains were actually the property of not Dan anymore. These mountains over here, where you can see the yellow and brown, these mountains are the mountains of Ephraim. Pushed him out of Dan to Ephraim. Timnah Serach is where Yeshua was buried. We're going to find that in chapter 2, right? And he was from Ephraim. So they pushed them out of the lowlands into the mountains, which weren't their own.
Can you go to his cabin?
Yeshua, yeah. I think it's you have to go with the army, I think. Okay? So the key, lo nesano la redet laemet. Now, what does key usually mean? Because. But it doesn't make sense over here. He did not give him, meaning the Amorites. Now here's the thing, because the Amorites is a tribe, right? The Amorite tribe did not give them permission or allow them, la redet, to come down la emek into the lower lands. The lower lands here means the lowlands that go from the mountains to the sea. So although Dan had conquered that, they pushed them out, but they pushed them because they didn't let them? No, they pushed them because they didn't want them to be there, right? What does it mean? So the key have to mean here like ayi. Key is like very, very lots of different uses as a, what's the word? Not preposition, conjunction. They put pressure on them. What do I mean to say by that? In English you say ayi, that they didn't let them come down into the valley. That's what the key means. It doesn't mean because. Right?
What's Nasanu?
To give him. Nisano, the vav at the end is to him. Natan lo. He did not give him permission, did not give them, meaning the tribe of the tribe of the Amorite tribe did not give the Danite tribe permission to come down into the valley. So what did they have to do? Now for Yoel, what does Yoel mean here?
Agree.
Doesn't mean agree. They agreed to live in the mountains.
They accepted. No?
That means they tried, they started, they wanted. Again, you could want to do something and agree, but it just means they wanted. They wanted Lashevet Bahar Cheres. They wanted to go and live in the mountains, which were actually not from Dan, which was actually the property of Yoshu, of the tribe of Ephraim. So they're coming from here, pushing these guys out, and now they actually want to take over the mountain area as well. They're trying their luck, these Amorites. So by Yoel, they tried, or they started, or they wanted Lashevet to dwell Behar Cheres, Be'ayalon. Now today, Ayalon is the name of the major road that goes through Tel Aviv. Okay, but it's actually an area a bit further inland. That's what it's called, right? Nof Ayalon. Okay, so it's somewhere over here. Eshtaol, Elyon. It's around here somewhere. Can't see it. Okay, so they're trying to, this is part of their move. Shalavim, you ever heard of Shalavim? That's a kibbutz, there's a yeshiva in Shalavim, okay? And that's also on the Tel Aviv road. So that's the area that they wanted to occupy. Vatichbad Yad Bet Yosef, but the hand of the house of Yosef became Tichbad, heavy. Heavy. Kaved is heavy. It also means
Respect.
that's kavod, but it's related,
This
right?
is prevail.
Yes, that's just how you say it in nice English, right? Because when you become heavy over somebody else in battle, you prevail, right? Okay, but the word means heavy, right? Kaved actually means liver. Your liver is your kaved. Now, why your liver is heavy, I don't know. It's probably because the liver has got a lot of jobs to do. The busiest thing I think it does the most jobs of the whole of all the organs in the body. The liver has 240 different jobs to do.
Right.
Something like that. Check it out. Yeah, the liver does a lot of different things. What? No. Two kidneys. Kidneys. Right, Baruch Hashem, one of mine doesn't work. Now we got two. Right. Okay. So, yes, your liver. So, that's it. Now, also respect. Respect is because he's a heavyweight. Understand? A person who's carries a lot of respect.
Right.
It's the same idea. Kavod, kaved. Okay. Right. So now, what's Yosef got to do with the story? How did they come into the story? It says that the Amorites pressured the Danites into the mountains, and they try to actually take over the mountains. So because I told you those mountains don't actually belong to Dan, they actually belong to Ephraim. So they actually pushed the Danites into the Ephraimite region. When they want to take over the mountain as well, they're actually trying to take over the region of Ephraim. And that, the guys of Yosef said, no, we're not doing that. It means the people of Yosef didn't come to help the Danites, that the Amorites wouldn't push them out. But when they actually wanted to take their own territory, then the tribe of Yosef said, enough's enough. You know? They were prepared that the Danites should come and live with them. Right? Because they did that. But now that's too much. So it says, the tribe of Yosef, which means Ephraim and Manasseh, or one of them because they're both from Yosef, Vayiu Lamas, and then they forced the Amorites to pay tribute. But it doesn't say that they allowed the Danites back in. That doesn't say. The Danites were still, it's only when they tried to take over the mountain areas of Ephraim that they pushed them back. Okay, last passage of the chapter, and the border of the Amorites, Mimale Akrabim, which is interesting because Male Akrabim, if you look on a map, is down here. Right?
Right.
And we do nothing to do with that. We're talking about the Danites up here. It's completely different part of the world. There probably is another place called Male Akrabim, but it's unlikely. But I mean, it's unlikely because the word Male Akrabim, right? You ever been to Male Akrabim? Male Akrabim is a mountain pass. The word Ma'aleh is from the word to go up. La'alot. Okay? La'alot is the verb. Right?
Akbar is
No, Aqaba, right, is the Arab equivalent to Eilat. Right? But Male Akrabim, right, is a Akrab is a scorpion. It's Scorpion Pass.
What's spider?
Spider is a kavish, right? Akrav is a scorpion. Okay, now why it's called Scorpion Pass? Probably because it's in the desert, down here in the desert of, right? It's just near what's it called? The Ramon crater, which is a bit further south. And you go. I've been on it once. You go like this, like 10 times to get down the mountains. That's just a mountain pass. So it's unlikely there's anywhere in this area called that. And now we're describing the Emirate border, which goes from here, right, all the way till Mehasela, from the rock. Now I don't know what rock it's referring to. Yeah. Uma'ala, and upwards. Now what does upwards mean? That's really strange, because upwards doesn't usually mean north. No, we never find upwards mean north. Upwards means higher elevation. Now how can a border be from a rock upwards? It means you live on top of the mountain and we live at the bottom of the mountain? Could be. But on the contrary, the Amorites were the ones who lived in the valley. So they're not from the border upwards, they're from the border downwards. Okay? So I really don't know what it means. I don't know what rock it's referring to. Why it should be down here when the Amorites lived up here, I also don't know. Right? But what I do get a message from this pasuk is very interesting. This is the first time we've talked about a border with the Amorites or with the Canaanites. We've allowed them to live. They've paid taxes. We live amongst them. They live amongst us. But it's our borders. Understand? The borders of the land never once changed. The land is our land. Right? And now all of a sudden we've got a border. Now when you make a border with someone, that means you're admitting that there is another political entity next door. It's called a two-state solution. Right? It means at this point seems to be the point that God gets really annoyed. You know, if you don't want to keep my commandments and you've had enough of killing Canaanites, I understand that. Right? But at least at some point you're going to get, you're going to do what you're supposed to. Not yet, sometime in the future. When you make a border with somebody, you've come to terms with the fact this is like a permanent settlement. And that's unacceptable. That we should have a permanent settlement. Now, again, you get this right. I'm not trying to make political statements here. I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't have a two-state solution. I'm just using that as a way to bring the concept closer to our hearts. I'm not trying to say that they're right or wrong. I'm just trying to use it as a muscle, right? That you understand that these things exist in a real world. Sometimes you don't come to it, right? Ben Gvir, for example, and all the other rightists have their plan is to throw all the Arabs into the sea, or at least to transport them somewhere else. And in the meantime, we'll have to wait, play it out until we can get that done. But that's the goal, right? And others say, no, that's not their goal. No, maybe at some time it might have been their goal. 100 years ago was the Zionist dream would have been the West Bank and the east side of the Jordan. Yes, that wasn't the dream at one point, but we've come to terms with the reality. We just have to, the two-state solution, permanent solution. And that seems to this Malcolm, he says, what God's annoyed with. That's why at this point, God says, enough's enough. Right? This is unacceptable. You should make an official border with the Amorites. This is Israel, and that's Palestine, and we're just going to leave it like that. No, God wants the Jews to control the whole land, not just control, to live there and throw the other guys out, and this is unacceptable. And that's why chapter 2 starts now, Vaya'al Malach Hashem, and the angel of God came up. You see, that's the Malbim's immediate reaction to the fact that we've made a border with the Amorites. Here?
So it's not that they live together, it's not...
It's bad! But that, God can understand it.
But God's, point was...
Right, this is like the last straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. Right, because God immediately reacts after this. Although that's what it looks like, although there's a pay in between, but this is the point that God says, enough's enough, I have to tell you what I'm thinking about this. I want you to know I'm very, very annoyed that you've come to a permanent solution, which is not my solution. My solution is to have the land of Israel with Jews and pagans out. Okay? But this is not racist. I have nothing against Canaanites. You want to be nice and from and keep the Noachide commandments, we live at peace with you. Right? That's not racist. Racist is when it makes no difference what you do.
Was that the terms of them living with one another?
That's what the Rambam holds. They had to. You can stay here, but you have to accept the Noachide commandments. Right? You'll be.
When in the past examples that we read, that they said they dwell together, they live together.
They were not doing that. These goyim were continuing.
They were just doing their idol
exactly the same thing. You're right, and then as we're going to learn very soon, it didn't take very long before they started copying their ways and marrying their daughters, etc., etc. Which is why God didn't want them to do it in the first place. Okay? All right. Have we got time still?
Yeah.
Good. Vayam Malach Hashem, and an angel of God. Now it's interesting. Sometimes angels, right? We say the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, God's name, right? And sometimes it says Elokim. Now those are two words referring to God. Usually one refers to the attribute of mercy, that's Yud Kei Vav Kei, and Elokim refers to God's attribute of strict justice, because the word Elohim means a judge. It's actually used for a human judge. Right? In Parshat Shoftim it says, you shall bring your courts to Elohim. You don't bring them to God, you bring them to court. So the word Elohim means a judge. So God as a judge is Elohim. And God is judging them, but here he's not actually done anything yet. He's giving them a message of mercy. Listen, this, and I want you to know you're doing something wrong. That's merciful. That's not. When they go, that's judge, right? But in the meantime, now, this might have been an angel, okay? But that's a bit strange, because he wouldn't come from Gilgal, right? That's why I asked you where the angels live. They don't live in Gilgal. So there's no reason for an angel to come from Gilgal. I don't know where they live exactly in Shamayim, but the point, they don't live in Gilgal. Gilgal is a town where the Mishkan had been originally for the first 14 years, but this is after that. Okay? The Mishkan had now moved to Shiloh. It was there for 369 years. So the Mishkan isn't there. But Gilgal was still always a spiritual center, because that's where the Mishkan had been for 14 years. Okay? So now the word Malach doesn't always mean an angel. Often in Tanakh it means a messenger. Right? And that's what it means over here. He sent a messenger. A messenger of God, Rashi says, is a prophet. So you look in the Targum, you know what the Targum is? It's Aramaic translation. Right. Now, in the Chumash, the Aramaic translation was written by a man called Onkelos, who was a nephew of the Hadrian. Correct. He was the nephew of Hadrian, the emperor, and he was converted. Right. What did you say?
He resurrected some of the dead people before he converted.
Very good. Resurrected is the wrong word to use. He did a seance. Right. He brought back the spirit, Ouija board, right, of Hadrian, and he asked him what should he do, should he become Jewish or not, whatever. That's the story. Okay, correct. That's the story. Gemara in I can't remember, in Gittin, I think it is. Okay, and the point is that he wrote the translation of the Chumash in Aramaic. The translation of the Novi into Aramaic was written by somebody else called Yonasan ben Uziel. Not Onkelos. There was no Onkelos translation to the Chumash. So the Aramaic translation, which is a very, very ancient work, goes back to the time of Hillel and Shammai. So it's relatively, reasonably authoritative translation. The traditional translation, it says over here that this was a prophet. Okay, because that's what it means. A messenger of God is a prophet. Actually, Rashi says who the prophet was. Rashi says it was Pinchas, who was the famous guy who stabbed the Midianite princess and the Nasi of the tribe of Shimon. Right, exactly. Okay, so that was Pinchas, and he came with his message. So he came from Gilgal, because that's, I suppose, where he lived, right? Well, that's where he got the prophecy in Gilgal, and he came Ela Bochim, to a place called Bochim. What Bochim means? Crying. Now, you'll see later on that this town got this name afterwards. It wasn't called Bochim at the time. As a result of this story, it became Bochim. But that the Tanakh does the whole time. I went to this place, which eventually got this name. I just tell you, it's today called that. So that's what we call it.
Maybe here it's like he went to the sound of the crying.
No, but it could have been that. But you look, there was nobody crying yet. They only cried after he gave his speech. Right? Okay. You get this all over Tanakh. They came to the valley of Eshkol, and they cut off a branch of grapes, which is an Eshkol, and that's why they called it Eshkol. So they didn't come to the valley of Eshkol. They came to the place that's now known as the valley of Eshkol because of this story. And now you know why it's got this name. It's the same thing over here. Okay. Bayomer. And who said? Well, the messenger said in the name of God, it means. Right? Bayomer, and he said. Pinchas, or the messenger said, A'aleh. A'aleh means?
I will go up.
I will bring up. I will bring up etchem, you, me, Mitzrayim, from Egypt. So God said, this is now saying in the name of God. God said, this was my plan. I would bring you out of Egypt, va'avi, and I.
Bring?
Well, va'avi can mean I will bring you, it can mean I brought. Etchem el haaretz, I brought you to this land. Asher nishba'ati, that I swore, le'avotechem, to your forefathers. Va'omar, and I will say, and I said. Omar is I will say. Va'omar, and I said. Lo afer briti itchem la'olam. I will not annul. Lahafer means to break an agreement. Right? Hafer, afer is I will break. Lo afer, I will not break briti, my covenant. Itchem ha'emedu la'olam. This was my plan. I would take you out of Egypt, I bring you into the land, and we will have this relationship forever. That was I planned, God, that was my plan. But you have to use a condition for this plan. Pasuk Beis. Ve'atem, you lo techrutu, must not make any brit covenant. I have a covenant with you as long as you don't make any covenants with other people. Because the covenants are mutually exclusive. If you make covenants and peace and friends with all these pagans, then it's going to interfere with our covenant. Right? And therefore, that's why I said, I will have this, but you must not make covenants liyoshvei haaretz, with the inhabitants of the land. This land. Now, the word karet means to cut. But here, you say in Hebrew, you say to cut an agreement. To cut a deal, you say in English. Right? You cut the deal, don't cut the deal. Right? You maybe cut the ribbon after you make the deal. Right? So that's how you say it in Hebrew as well. To cut an agreement, to cut a Brit. So you mustn't cut a deal. It could be that one of the reasons was, if you remember the Bris Bein Habsarim, that was the covenant between the pieces, when God said to Abraham, I'm going to give you the land of Israel, and your descendants will be strangers in the strange land for 400 years. And then Abraham was told to take a whole load of animals and cut them in half, and they walked in between the pieces. So it seems that traditionally, when two people made an agreement, they would cut something, right, and the two members of the agreement would walk in between those pieces, because that's what they did over there. Like God and Abram walked together. It wasn't God, but it was the fire that represented God walked in between those pieces. So that's what's called to cut an agreement, because you cut something, and then you walk in between those parts, as if we become, like the animal should really be what's one animal. There's two. I mean, we're now in between when we become one. Okay, so maybe that's why the word cut is to use, because that was how it was done traditionally. Okay, so don't make any agreements with the inhabitants of this land. On the contrary, mizbechoisehem, their altars, titotsun, you shall smash. That's what I said. Not only must you not agree, you must smash everything of their pagan worships. That was all my plan. I had a plan. This was your side of the agreement. Yeah. You didn't listen to my voice. Mazot asitem. What is this you've done?
Can I just ask?
Is that a bit repetitive? You didn't listen to my voice. What have you done? You just told him what I've done. I didn't listen to your voice. What is it? If you would have said, what have you done? No. What have you done? You didn't listen to my voice. That would be good. What are you doing? You didn't listen to my voice. But it doesn't say that. It says, you didn't listen to my voice. What are you doing?
Why are you not listening to my words?
Why? It doesn't say that. It says what? If he said why, I had no questions. It says what? So the Malbim says, what God is saying is that not only should you listen to me because I said so, it makes a lot of sense in itself. Why are you doing this? There's no sense. You want to live here with these pagans? They're just going to be in the way. So besides the fact that I told you to get rid of them, right? You just... No other country would have tolerated these people. Once you conquered them, then you chuck them out. Either you kill them, or if you don't like killing, just force them to leave. And no, just pay your taxes, and even some of them didn't even do that. Right? That's what he's saying. It makes, first of all, I told you, and in addition, it makes no logical sense. Good? All right. How are we doing?
4.5 minutes.
Okay, let's go. We'll get to the point and we'll stop. V'gam amarti. Now, in addition to my promise to keep this covenant forever, amarti means I had said. Amarti, I said. Lo agaresh otam. I will... Sorry. Erase. V'gam means I've now said. Means just like you said that you're not listening to my voice, so I've changed as well. You didn't keep your side of the agreement, so I'm not keeping my side of the agreement. So what my side of the agreement would have this permanent relationship? No, from now on, no. Lo agaresh otam, I will not drive them out. Mipneichem, in face of you. Up till now, I was helping you miraculously, miracle after miracle, the book of Yeshua. And now I helped you, and you. So now God says, I'm not going to help you anymore. Vayu lachem litzidim, and they will be for you as thorns. Now, where do you get the word thorns from? Where does the word sidim mean thorns?
I don't know, actually.
That's what it's translated?
Yeah.
It's a bit of a difficult word. Usually, when you have this expression in the Chumash, it says they will be thorns in your sides. The word for side, no, you can have thorns in your eyes, you can also have thorns in your side, and the word side is sad. It's actually the same in Hebrew and English. Sad, side.
Oh,
Right?
wow.
Same word, right? Especially if you're Sephardi,
Yes.
because the sadi isn't so pronounced as Ashkenazim do it.
Thought.
Sadi is more
Thought.
softer. Okay, so usually you will be thorns in your sides, and here they will be in your sides, but the thorns is missing, right? So I suppose you have to add it in to make it make sense. They will be thorns in your sides, which means they'll be physically a problem. They'll attack you. They'll fight you. They'll
Like it should be a nuisance for you.
a nuisance, more than just a nuisance, right? They'll suicide bomb you, and they'll steal from you, and right. That's one thing. The Elohim and their gods, Yolachem leMokesh, will be a mokesh. What's a mokesh?
Mine.
Yes. In modern Hebrew, mokesh is a mine, that type of mine, things that blow up when you stand on them, right? It means something that will be a stumbling block. That's what it means. Their gods will be something because they'll be attractive. You'll go to church and you'll follow their ways. So they'll both be a physical threat and a spiritual threat. And it was Kedaber Malach Hashem, when the messenger of God spoke, Es Hadvarim Ha'ela, these things, El Kol Bnei Yisrael, to all the Jews who were there in this place. We don't know the name of the place originally, right? And what do? Yisru Ha'ames Kolam Vayivku, and the people lifted their voices. They raised their voices, Vayivku, and they cried, because they heard the message. They're right. God's right. What do? We just carry on as normal, or we do tshuva? Well, let's see what they did. Yikru Shema Makomahu Bochim. They gave the name of the place Bochim. So you see clearly the place wasn't called Bochim till then. But where was this place? Now we don't know. But look at the next pasuk. Yizbechu Sham LaHashem, and they sacrificed there to God. Now this is shocking. This is against Jewish practice. How can you sacrifice outside the temple?
Oh, wow.
Not allowed. So my guess, this was actually, well, the temple isn't the right word, the Mishkan, right? The temple, but outside the Mishkan was also forbidden. You might have learned a Mishnah in Megillah. There are certain times where outside the Mishkan is permitted, but that's only when the Mishkan wasn't functioning properly. It was after the Ark was captured, and there was no Ark in the Mishkan. When there was no Ark in the Mishkan, in the, I don't know, it was 56 years in between when the Ark was removed from the Mishkan and the temple was built, then it was permitted to make sacrifices outside.
Where
Okay?
was the ark during those 50 years? Was it hidden in a cave?
No. That's no. It was stolen by the Philistines. It was very quickly returned because they suffered terribly from it.
Like the
right?
Indiana Jones movie.
Right. Yes, it was wreaked havoc amongst the Philistines. Right, died and they got plagued. Then they sent it back to Israel, and there were some people who didn't show the proper respect for it, and they died as well. Eventually, ended up in a place called Kiryat Ye'arim, which is today called Telstone. Telstone is on the Tel Aviv highway. It was kept there for about 50 years during the reign of Shaul and during the reign of King David, and then it was moved to Yerushalayim during the reign of David, but there was no temple yet. It was kept in a tent in Yerushalayim, and then after Shlomo Melech built the temple, then the Ark was moved. During those 56 years that the Ark was in different places, the Mishkan wasn't considered fully functioning, and then it was permitted to make sacrifices outside there. But this was during the time the Mishkan was in Shiloh, it was forbidden. So my suggestion is this place called Bochim was actually Shiloh, which would make a lot of sense because that was the national center of the Jewish people. So this prophet got his inspiration in Gilgal. He goes to Shiloh, right? And they called the place Bochim temporarily because everyone was crying there. It wasn't actually a real place called Bochim because we don't find the word Bochim anywhere else in Tanakh, right? So it's very possible it was Shiloh, and that's where the people were, and that's why they got this message and they all burst out crying. And they brought outside, the sacrifices were meant to be some type of atonement, some type of sacrifice, sin offering, right? Some type of tshuva to get closer to God. Did it work? I don't know. We'll see in the following verses. Okay?
Thank you, Rabbi.
I think we discussed all the points that we mentioned.
Oh, I have two questions.
There's a few questions on the next piece. We didn't get there yet.
Two questions.
Yes.
Where was the ark during the destruction of the first temple?
Beautiful question. There's a bit of a debate. The general consensus means, like most people assume, is that the ark was buried by Yoshio Melech. Yoshio Melech was one of the last kings of Israel. He was king about 50 years before the temple was destroyed, and he realized that things were coming to an end, and it was buried underneath the Temple Mount. Now, according to this tradition, King Solomon, when he built the temple, knew the temple wouldn't be permanent, and knew that one time it would be destroyed, and he built these catacombs underneath the Temple Mount for the purpose of placing the ark there before it gets destroyed.
Okay.
Next question. If the ark is underneath the Temple Mount, why didn't anyone go and find it and put it in its place?
Well, what happened when the a rabbi of Yerushalayim went down there?
Yes, I believe that story is not actually accurate. I
Really?
think that story is actually a story in Hebron.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a story in Hebron when the fascist sword fell into the cave of Machpelah, into where the patriarchs are buried. That's the way I was brought up on that story. And they lowered him down, and he died, and they put the next one, and then the rabbi went in there, and he met King David or something down there.
There wasn't a rabbi that went down there in the last 30 or 20 years.
This story happened hundreds of years ago.
Yeah, I know that story.
Yeah, there was another one in anyway. So, but what's interesting is in the second temple they had no ark.
What?
The second temple there was no ark. Mishnah in Yuma, explicit Mishnah in Yuma says in the second temple there was no ark in the Holy of Holies. It was still the Holy of Holies. It was still significant because it wasn't the ark that did that. It was the point of creation.
Yeah.
That was the Evan Shasiyah is holy without the ark.
Right.
It's a good place to put the ark, right?
So what about